Okay, I'm so sorry about that. I hope some of you are still watching. So just to recap, the reason that I've decided today to have a live Facebook video is because some really exciting research was published on June 20th. I've been away for the last couple of weeks, so it was only now that I could share this with everybody. Essentially what was found by a bunch of researchers in Brazil is that women specifically who practice yoga in later age have greater prefrontal cortical thickness than those who do not. The researchers looked at, I think about 21 women who practiced yoga, and the average amount of practice was 14 years and more, so a significant amount, and 21 people who didn't practice. And what they found was there was a thickening, a statistically significant thickening, I should add, in the prefrontal cortical region on the left side as compared to the controls who had not practiced yoga. So I think the question, first of all, about this is, what does this mean and why is this important? So just to give you some context, in 2007 at Harvard, Dr. Sarah Lazar's lab discovered something similar. And this particular trial in 2005 basically was like a springboard for the entire movement of of mindfulness influencing brain functioning, and thereby gave a great amount of raison d'etat for the medical community at large to pick up mindfulness. So I have been waiting for somebody to do a similar kind of study on yoga, very sure that we would find similar effects, and in fact they did. So let's talk about what the prefrontal cortex does and what makes this exciting. So the prefrontal cortex is a frontal lobe structure, probably around here, prefrontal, so well described, and it plays many different roles. First of all, it plays a role in reappraisal, and by reappraisal we mean the ability to perceive a phenomenon that we would have understood as being a particular way from possibly a new angle. And since I work so commonly with people with mental health, I'm going to give a mental health example that will be relevant and practical. So let's say, for example, you have a negative self-view, as many of us do in the world, even without significant mental health issues. And you go to see your friend. And your friend, when you're talking to them, is not smiling at you, is not making deep eye contact. And your perception of that experience is your friend no longer cares about you or does not like you. And maybe that is the self-talk that you would usually engage in those experiences, leading to a greater sense of low self-worth and possibly even a negative interaction with that person. But if you could reappraise the scenario, you might say to yourself, it may have absolutely nothing to do with me, in fact. I know that my friend, we'll use my name, Heather, actually had a really rough week. She's probably just tired, or she may be upset herself, and it has nothing to do with me, and I can inquire. So it allows us to look at something not from a habitual perspective, but a more open one. In addition, this structure is associated with greater psychological resilience, right? Particularly because there are pathways between the prefrontal cortex and the amygdala, which is a limbic structure, which means it's kind of a little bit more central in the brain, that is considered to be the alarm bell of the brain. And we all need an alarm bell if we are actually threatened in order to help us mobilize to deal with the threat. However, in modern society, and specifically for those of us with any mental health issues, but especially anxiety, the amygdala has more connections, is hyperactive, and we find that we feel under threat in situations that are not actually dangerous. Generally speaking, when the amygdala is larger, the prefrontal cortex is smaller, which means we can't reconsider our responses. However, when the prefrontal cortex is larger, it has much more reign over that sense of anticipatory threat or threat in general, and we can downgrade our responses, and thereby we are more resilient. So these are two important aspects of this particular brain structure. Now, when we get more specific about it, right, so this trial found that there was a greater volume specifically on the left side. So there are differences research has found, particularly Richard Davidson's lab, if you'd like to look it up, that the left side of the prefrontal cortex is associated with greater immunity, which is very interesting, approach-oriented behaviors, so we go towards something, and overall greater well-being. Alternatively, right side activity tends to be more associated with emotional overwhelm and also with more inhibition-oriented behaviors, or also kind of a cringing away from experience. So to find in this trial that there was a greater volume in that structure is extremely meaningful. It means greater overall health, possibly greater immunity, greater ability to modulate our responses to experience, and a greater ability to kind of see things with the new mind, right? And this is very interesting because although mindfulness can deliver similar things, sitting quiet with one's mind in order to experience those benefits for somebody with a mental health issue is very difficult. And I speak from personal experience, both as somebody who's tried to do that and somebody who's worked as a clinician in that way. Alternatively, when we stay and watch and feel the experience, for example, of a seated forward bend, Paschimottanasana, that kind of reinvestigating of an experience is natural and easier and does not require the same kind of mental flexibility. So to find that yoga can deliver those benefits is extremely exciting. I think that this study is going to be picked up more and more, first of all, by the media. I think it's going to be a springboard for a lot of other scientific inquiry, and it is the study that if you are going into a mental health setting that you would want to cite as the most exciting recent trial demonstrating yoga's value for mental health populations. Remember, though, that this was done for individuals who had practiced for 14 years or more, so it's not an immediate benefit. That's not to say it couldn't have happened in a shorter period of time, but we don't know because that trial wasn't done yet. And the last thing that I want to add in relationship to this is, as we age, there is a natural cortical thinning that happens, especially in the prefrontal cortex. So not only is this relevant for mental health populations, these findings are suggestive of a protective effect against the normal process of brain aging and keeping us stronger, our cognition stronger, or we could say our executive functioning stronger. And the researchers, in fact, referred to this level of volume in comparison to controls, indicating greater working overall memory, resilience, and psychological health. So I hope this was helpful. You probably want to know the name of the paper, don't you? So you can look it up yourself. I'll put it at the bottom as well of this video, but it's called Greater Cortical Thickness in Elderly Female Yoga Practitioners, a Cross-Sectional Study. And the primary author was Rui, R-U-I. But I'll put it for all of you. Thank you so much for listening. I'm sure if you're watching, you already know the value of yoga. But this is something that will help other people to understand it as well. Have a lovely weekend. Namaste.